There is a silent way to teach people not to respect you, trying to please them all the time. Every time you say yes when you want to say no, explain yourself because you are afraid of being judged, or accept something that crosses your boundaries because you do not want to lose someone. You believe you are protecting that relationship, but you may be doing exactly the opposite. You are showing that other people's opinions carry more weight than your own conscience. And when this happens again and again, something dangerous begins. You become more and more agreeable, but less and less respected. The Stoics understood this paradox nearly 2,000 years ago. The respect you chase moves farther away. The respect that grows from character does not need to be chased. There is an enormous difference between being kind and being unable to tolerate disapproval. Today you will discover which behaviors you need to abandon if you want to stop silently begging for acceptance and build a presence that can be felt without effort. But there is one final trap that almost no one notices. You can abandon all these behaviors and still remain a slave to approval. When we reach it, you may discover that even the desire to be respected can become another prison. Epictetus taught one of the most important distinctions in Stoicism. Some things are up to us, others are not. Your choices are up to you. Your character is up to you. The way you treat someone is up to you. But the opinion that person forms about you is not under your control. The problem begins when you try to control precisely that last part. You choose your words so you will not upset anyone. You change your behavior to avoid criticism. You tolerate situations that violate your conscience so you can remain accepted. And little by little you stop asking, what is right, and start asking, what will they think of me? That is where your presence begins to disappear. Behavior. 1. Overexplaining your decisions. Notice how often you feel the need to present a complete defense for a simple choice. You cannot attend something, and instead of simply declining, you create a long explanation. You need to establish a boundary and immediately try to soften it with apologies. You make an important decision and spend the next several minutes trying to convince everyone that you had good reasons. Behind all those explanations, there may be a silent message. Please approve of my decision so I can be at peace with it. A secure person also explains when an explanation is necessary. The difference is that they do not turn every choice into a request for permission. If someone disagrees, they listen. If there is truth in the criticism, they learn. But if their conscience remains clear, they do not spend hours trying to control someone else's interpretation. There is tremendous strength in being able to say, I understand that you see it differently, and then continuing on your path. You do not need to win every trial taking place inside other people's minds. Behavior 2. Saying yes when your conscience is asking you to say no. Someone asks for your time. You do not want to give it, but you agree. Someone crosses a boundary. You notice it but remain silent. Someone demands something unfair, and you give in because you imagine that setting a limit will make that person like you less. For a moment, it seems as if you preserved the peace, but what peace? There was no conflict on the outside. Inside, you know you abandoned yourself. And every time this happens, your mind learns a dangerous lesson. Other people's discomfort matters more than your integrity. Being a good person does not mean being available for every demand. Your no does not need anger, revenge, or contempt behind it. A calm no can be one of the clearest demonstrations of maturity. And here is the paradox. When you accept the possibility of disappointing some people, you finally begin to stop disappointing yourself. Behavior 3. Reacting to everything. A criticism appears and you need to answer. Someone provokes you and you need to strike back. Someone misunderstands you and immediately you feel the urge to correct the story. It is as if every word thrown in your direction has the power to press a button inside you. But if anyone can determine your emotional state with a single sentence, who is really governing your mind? Self-control begins in the small space between what happens and what you decide to do. There is a silence that comes from fear, and another that comes from self-mastery. Someone who remains silent because they fear rejection is still a slave to approval. On the outside, they are quiet. On the inside, they are desperately wondering what everyone thought. Strong silence is different. It is looking at a provocation and realizing, I could respond, but I do not need to. It is having an answer and still deciding whether the situation deserves your energy. When you stop reacting to everything, Your words gain weight because they are no longer wasted on every battle. And this brings us to a behavior that is even harder to notice because it is often mistaken for kindness. Behavior 4. Being available all the time. Answering immediately. Canceling your plans to solve other people's problems. Abandoning your priorities whenever someone calls. Feeling guilty when you cannot help. At first glance, this looks like generosity. But ask yourself an uncomfortable question. Are you helping because you choose to help, or because you are afraid of what will happen if you stop? There is an enormous difference between availability and dependency. Someone who is genuinely generous gives their time because they choose to. Someone who needs to please gives their time because they are afraid of no longer being needed. And when your presence becomes unlimited, it can begin to be treated as guaranteed. Seneca emphasized the value of time precisely because we give this resource away so easily, even though it can never be recovered. Before saying yes, ask yourself, am I doing this out of virtue or out of fear of disappointing someone? That question may reveal how many times you called something kindness when deep down it was fear of rejection. And if these ideas are helping you build a stronger mind, subscribe now to Stoic Spring. Creating the habit of protecting your inner peace and growing in maturity can profoundly improve the way you live, make decisions, and relate to others. Now we go deeper. Because you can learn to say no, stop reacting, and protect your time, and still remain a prisoner of approval. Behavior 5. Trying to control the image of you that exists in other people's minds. You do everything right, and someone says you are selfish. You establish boundaries, and someone says you have become cold. You remain silent in the face of a provocation, and someone calls it weakness. You defend your principles, and someone else interprets it as arrogance. Then comes the urge to chase after those people and correct their perception. But there is something you need to accept if you want to become truly free. You will be misunderstood. No matter how careful you are, people do not see you through your eyes. They interpret your actions through their own experiences, expectations, insecurities, and values. You control your intentions and your actions. You do not control the lens through which someone else sees them. Listen to honest criticism. Correct yourself when you are wrong. Apologize when you cause harm. But do not turn your existence into an endless campaign to convince everyone that you are a good person. The more energy you spend managing every opinion, the less energy remains for managing what actually belongs to you, your character. Behavior 6. Changing your principles so you can keep belonging. Here, we reach the root. Imagine someone who agrees with everyone. In one group, they think one way. In another, they completely change. With one person, they defend a certain value. With someone else, they abandon that same value to avoid tension. At first, this person may seem pleasant, but there is something they will struggle to communicate: solidity, because no one knows where they truly stand. Worse, perhaps they no longer know either. This is where pleasing others stops being merely a social behavior and begins to corrode your identity. You surrender a small piece of yourself to avoid rejection, then another and another, until one day you realize that you gained the approval of many people, but lost the ability to look within and recognize who is actually living your life. This is where Stoicism stops being a collection of beautiful quotes, because now there is a price. Maintaining your principles when everyone agrees with them is easy. The real test appears when being consistent costs you something. Maybe it costs you someone's approval. Maybe it costs you an invitation. Maybe someone walks away. Maybe a person who liked your lack of boundaries will not like the version of you that learned to have them. And then you will have to decide which loss you can endure, losing someone's approval or losing your self-respect again. This is where true presence begins, not in a rehearsed posture, not in a deep voice, not in techniques designed to make you appear confident. Presence is born when what you think, what you say, and what you do begin moving in the same direction. You do not need to announce your values because your decisions reveal them. You do not need to say that you have self-control because your reactions demonstrate it. You do not need to demand respect because the way you treat your own time teaches others how you expect to be treated. But the trap I mentioned at the beginning is still waiting, and it is the most important one of all. Imagine that you stop feeling the need to explain everything. You learn to say no. You stop reacting to provocations. You protect your time. You establish boundaries. You become stronger. But you do all of this while secretly expecting a reward, expecting people to finally admire you, expecting them to miss your presence, expecting them to chase after you, expecting them to finally recognize your value. Do you see what happened? You changed the behaviors, but you are still depending on the same thing. Approval simply changed clothes. At the beginning, you wanted to learn how to make people respect you. Now you realize that this was still the wrong question, because if this entire transformation is merely a new strategy for gaining respect, you will remain a prisoner of other people's reactions. This is the true climax of Stoic freedom. Stop pleasing people not so you can become more desired, admired, or respected, but because your conscience is finally no longer for sale. The goal is not to manipulate people into chasing you. It is to no longer need them to chase you. It is not about making someone miss your presence. It is about being able to remain at peace even when no one does. It is not about proving your value to the world. It is about building a life that remains valuable even when the world does not applaud. And there is a simple test to discover whether you have truly reached that point. Imagine that for the next 30 days, no one recognizes your efforts. No one praises your discipline. No one thanks you for your kindness. No one admires your boundaries. No one even notices that you are changing. Would you continue? Would you keep doing what you believe is right when no one is watching? Would you remain disciplined without applause? Would you continue treating people with respect without receiving recognition? Would you continue protecting your principles even if some people misunderstood them? If your answer is yes, something profound has changed. You are no longer building an image. You are building character, and character does not need an audience. Think of an ancient tree standing in a storm. It does not scream to prove that it has roots. It does not ask the other trees to recognize its strength. It does not negotiate with the wind to appear powerful. It simply remains. Its roots do in silence what no appearance could ever imitate. Do the same with your life. Stop explaining every step. Stop turning every no into guilt. Stop responding to every provocation. Stop giving away your time because you are afraid of being forgotten. Stop trying to control interpretations that never belong to you. And above all, stop negotiating your principles to buy a few moments of acceptance. Some people may find it strange. Some may say you have changed, and perhaps they are right. Because a change must happen when someone finally understands that their peace can no longer depend on the opinions of everyone around them. You do not need to become cold. Keep being kind, keep loving, keep helping, keep listening. But do all of it from strength, not fear. The kindness of someone who could say no has value. The silence of someone who could respond has strength. The presence of someone who could chase attention but does not need it has depth. And then perhaps the very thing you spent so much time pursuing will finally happen. People may begin to feel something different when they are around you, not because you demanded respect, not because you learned some psychological trick, but because there is a calmness that is difficult to fake in someone who has finally stopped asking permission to be who they are. In the end, perhaps this is one of the most important lessons of Stoicism. You do not control who will like you, who will understand you, or who will recognize your value. But you do control who you choose to be when no one gives you any of those things, and that is a freedom no one can grant you, and no one can take away. If you made it this far, write in the comments, "I choose my peace." Make those words a commitment to yourself, and subscribe to Stoic Spring. By creating the habit of caring for your inner peace and growing in maturity, your life can improve, not because the world will finally behave exactly as you want it to, but because you will become increasingly prepared to remain whole when it does not. Stop chasing respect. Build the character that makes chasing it unnecessary.